Hey, this is Kat Perkins, and you're listening to the Ken Valdez Approach on Rock Rage Radio.
Welcome to the Ken Valdez Approach.
Oh, yeah, welcome on in. It's your boy KV coming at you from my Soul Renegade Sound Studio here in Minneapolis. I'm welcoming you to the Ken Valdez Approach. Oh, my friends, I got a great show for you lined up. My special guest this week is Steve Augeri. Now, Steve used to have this band back in the day called Tall Stories. In fact, that's where I first heard about him. And Tall Stories, just a criminally overlooked band. It breaks my heart because they were so good. And as a matter of fact, their debut record, I believe, is one of the greatest American rock and roll records of all time. It is that good. I loved it. He also spent a little time in a band called Tyketto. And after that, well, he had the task of filling Steve Perry's shoes in the band called Journey. In fact, he was a singer that brought him back, if you will. And man, did he. He had a few great records with that band. And of course, that catalog is so difficult to sing no matter who you are. And, you know, a few years into his tenure with Journey, he kind of lost his voice a bit. And unfortunately had to gracefully bow out. Well, a few years have passed. His voice has come back, and he has just released a brand new record called Ways Til Sunday. And it is melodic rock gold, man. This guy really did something special. There's a lot of heart, lot of soul, rock and roll, and there's a few things in there, too, that were very, very surprising to me that were a bit of ear candy. And we're going to be talking a lot about that and finding out more about one Steve Augeri. So why don't you come and join me on this little interview with my guest, Steve Augeri. Let's find out what he's been up to right here on The Approach.
Well, here we are. We're hanging with Steve Augeri today after he has aged a year after talking to USPS. We've all been there. I get it. Regardless, man, how you doing, brother? How you doing? What's happening?
It's great to talk to you, Ken, man. I appreciate it. I know we've met in the past, but there's been way too many years in between. So
way too many. Yes, sir.
Great to reconnect and say hello to you and your listeners, buddy.
Hey, man. Well, dude, you got a brand new record. Things are looking real good. You got a new tour that's going to be coming up with some really exciting names. Look at that. Yeah. So we got 7 Ways Till Sunday. And let me tell you guys, this record it's spectacular. It really is. And I'm just going to start here, right? You are a guy who I look at as Mr. Consistency. No joke. Every record that I think I've ever heard you do has been outstanding. How do you keep that consistency up, man? Because, like, seriously, it's a remarkable track record that you have, dude.
Well, first of all, wow, that's an amazing compliment. But I'll tell you the truth. The reason why I haven't released a record in X amount of years is because maybe I wanted to keep that consistency going. So I waited for several years, and I would put a song out every year just to keep my audience just to let them know I was alive and still creating. But I finally released this record thinking, I think I finally, John Cain used to have an expression. He used to say, when we think we had enough songs for a record, for a Journey record, he'd say, we were holding, as if he's playing cards. Oh, we're holding. And I got to the point where I said, you know what, I'm starting to feel like I'm holding. I've got a good hand. And so that's when I said, and so maybe that has something to do with the consistency situation you're talking about. I just felt confident that, and then the pandemic hit, and I said, I better put this out before, the end of the world happens. And so that's a nice compliment. I appreciate that.
Hey,
well,
man.
I had Tall Stories to work with. That was a great, wonderful band. Tyketto.
Yes.
Another terrific band. And I'm proud of that record as well. And then, of course, then came the Journey album. So, yeah, I've been lucky. I've been fortunate.
Man, yeah, you definitely, like I said, that track record is something else. You brought up Tall Stories. We'll go back there. You guys had that one record. It was your self-titled record. This is the first one. Am I correct there in saying that?
Yes,
so the self-titled record, No joke, yo. If you guys have not listened to this record, you're missing out, because I truly believe in my heart of hearts, this is one of the greatest rock and roll records of all time. Bar none. Every song is a killer. Every performance is a killer. There's something, there's something recognizable, in the vibe, but delivered in a way that was so unique and so refreshing. It boggles my mind how you guys weren't the kings of the world. Really, that record alone, it still to this day stands the test of time. Tell me about those days, man. Coming up, starting out with that band. Was this the first band that you were in? Is this the first band that got traction?
Yeah, the first band that got traction, and I need to go back even a little in time, because the band started out with myself and 3 Brazilian cats. And this is where I think there's a little special DNA, a little hot sauce in the Tolstoy record, in that there was a drummer by the name of Magus Borges. And Magus, when we would sit down and write, and this is with Jack Moore and Kevin DeToy, the bassist and guitarist, if we ever laid something out that sounded normal or plain or average, he would just stop in his tracks and he'd say, it's too normal. It's too normal. And so between him pushing us to go out a little bit out of the lines, and then we had an amazing manager, Bud Prager, who managed Foreigner, and he managed Mountain, to just name a couple. The Foreigner is enough, right? Bud, we'd go into his office and we'd bring songs to him. He had this massive office with gold records and platinum records all around. I mean, he doesn't have enough room. He had them stacked up on the floor. He had so many gold albums because of Foreigner, right? Alone.
Right.
And we'd play a song from, and he'd just shaking his head. And what was his line? He'd say, terrible. He'd say, terrible. And you think it would give us a complex, and a lot of times we'd walk out of there just shaking our heads. So what the hell? What are we doing wrong? But eventually we'd walk out of there because we'd soften him up, and he'd start understanding what we were coming from, and the songs were getting there. We were pushing ourselves, and those guys, Kevin Tatoyan and all the guys in the band were tremendous writers, all talented in their own right, and they never get their credit. So we went through that gauntlet, and we had people pushing us not to be average. Look, when you're in the business and it's a 1 in a million shot, you've got to be able to stick out from this huge crowd.
Yes.
And so Margus, the drummer, saying it's too normal, and then Bud Prager saying terrible, pushed us to do the best record that we were capable of doing at that time. And that's why we were, music took a huge change. It had, when we released Tolstoy's, and that's why no one saw it or heard it, because grunge came in and, shook the apple tree.
Right.
And we fell by the wayside. But that happens, and that's life. What are you going to do? But that's the reality.
Man, well, I mean, grunge is what it is. And I mean, I love a lot of it, to be completely honest with you. However, you guys didn't sound like everybody else, man. That was the coolest thing about Tall Stories. And that was the thing that kind of left me a bit perplexed, was the fact that, at that time you had a lot of the hair bands, you had a lot of stuff like that, right? And that's fine. That's great.
Right.
Like, all good. We know what happened. You guys didn't have that. It wasn't, you had, oh gosh, man, you had those familiarities at times, but it was something a bit more raw and more melodic, and it wasn't following the trend or the path.
I agree. The truth is, it's funny. 1 or 2 photo sessions we had, Epic Records brings in a stylist, and they give you clothes and they puff up your hair, and the next thing you know, you look like every Tom, Dick, and Harry band in the world.
Sure.
And guitarist Jack Moore had a goatee at the time,
yeah.
and they wanted him to shave it for the photos, and he walked out of there getting back to he up in arms. It's like you guys don't dig it. He had his thumb on the pulse. He knew music was evolving, and we just wanted to make music that we felt was interesting, because we were listening to a wide spectrum of music, not just you mentioned hair metal or whatever style. We were coming from, look, when you grow up in New York City, you're bombarded from every direction from so many beautiful different styles of diverse music.
Yes.
And so we took that with us. Getting back to the drummer as well, coming from Brazil, he just had a different spin on things, whether rhythmically or melodically. And so that had started a little bit of the reason why we sounded just a little bit different. And, and kudos to those guys.
Yeah, man, for sure. And again, I urge all of you, if you want to do a little bit of a deep dive, do it and thank me later, because it really is, in my opinion, it's criminally overlooked. And again, quite possibly one of my favorites, if not, my pick for like the greatest rock and roll record ever. It's just that good, man. It's that good.
Well, that's a hell of a compliment. I'll never look a gift horse in the mouth.
There you go, man. Well, but then, let's go even back a little bit further, man. I mean, tell me about growing up, about how you discovered music, how you found your voice, and what led you into this career that you have.
All right, I'll make a very, very long story short, but I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, and the New York City music system, educational system at the time, had funds to put instruments in kids' hands, and that's really how it started. In grammar school, there was a wonderful teacher, Mr. Frederick Terragrossa, who saw a spark of talent in a kid. So he taught me how to sing a Puccini aria and sing at an auditorium when I was 5 years old. From there, I went on to learn saxophone and clarinet and bassoon. And fast forward, of course, the Beatles happened, and I saw them on television. I might have been about 5 years old or so. So that planted a seed. And going forward, I put together a rock and roll band as kids. And one thing led to another, and I finally ended up in a band, backing up this woman by the name of Marge Raymond. And Margie was Aerosmith's background vocalist and ELO's background vocalist.
Very cool.
So she put together her band. I was playing rhythm guitar and singing background vocals. And she got plucked when Aerosmith went down, when Perry and Joe Perry left.
Right,
They left the rhythm section. They left a void, and they tapped Marge to go sing. So they formed this wonderful band called Renegade, with Bob Mayo on keys and the rhythm section.
Wow.
And they hired Jimmy Crespo. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jimmy. He was in Aerosmith for a while as well. So anyway, long story short is Margie left to do that project, and I jumped into the lead vocalist situation.
Wow.
And that started, at 15, I decided I wanted to be, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then, it's just getting back to being in New York City. Now there's, growing up, there was a rock and roll band in every street, on every garage and every basement. There was at least one band. And you could literally walk a mile and hear about 12 bands. Rehearsing, because that, before video games, everybody was picking up Les Pauls and SGs and Ludwig drums, and
Right.
Everybody wanted to play music. That was the video game of the day, wasn't it?
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, it's a fact. It's just the way. Well, that's
Absolutely.
Going back now, looking back on it, that's definitely what the story was. So uh, that's it. That was the early childhood growing up in Brooklyn, and everybody. Oh, and then once, so we had a three-piece band called Thor.
I love it.
Yeah, and we were influenced by Rush and Led Zeppelin and Kiss and Queen and Black Sabbath. And we used to play all the Battle of the Bands, and it was the darndest thing. We just, we were just doing what we wanted to do, and we were starting to write our own songs. And we used to lend our equipment. I had a Marshall amplifier that my mother wished got the money. I'll never know. I was in a single parent household. We were just on the borderline of poverty. But one day she scraped up enough money for me to buy a used red Marshall stack.
Wow.
And we had the only band in the neighborhood who owned a PA system. It was just a PV. It was just a piggyback head with these really inexpensive, massive speakers. So whenever anybody had a gig, we'd lend it out. And my amp would always blow up and it never come back working. It was that kind of thing. But there was community. It was a beautiful musical community. And that's the cats we hung out with.
That's awesome, man.
And that I don't think that exists either anymore. It's just now everybody's making music on computers and not in the basements or the garage band. I mean, garage band, it was a thing. It was reality. Well, I'll tell you who I did know. So I literally grew up with and went to grammar school and junior high was James Lomenzo of White Lion.
Sure enough.
And then, of course, he's with Megadeth, but everything in between, he was with Snake Pit and
right.
This one, Creedence. We toured with Creedence, which is incredible.
Wow.
So James and I were tight. We were best buddies when we were kids. Who else? An acquaintance of mine, coincidentally, was CeCe DeVille. He lived down the road some in Brooklyn, and which we'll get to the Brett thing later about his summer tour. But we find each other. Everybody kind of finds. There's quite a few people I'm probably leaving out.
Man, well, I mean, the degrees of separation are minimal, and it's cool to see, especially around those people that you grew up with. That it all comes back full circle. And that's a cool thing. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. So, Tall Stories ends.
Yeah.
And you guys, you got tapped to sing with Tyketto. Is that correct?
Yeah. So here's this one. So I'm working at a nightclub, swinging a hammer, building a nightclub actually, and then I segued into bartending for a year. But before the nightclub opened, for a year I worked with this fellow by the name of Steve Catone, really talented, also talented singer and musician. And he had a talent he was very creative, sculptor, painter, and he had somebody backing him who had won the lottery and gave him money to work for an entire year to build a nightclub in Staten Island.
Oh, wow.
And he hired me and to build it. So for a year, that year we got acquainted with the fellas from Tyketto, because once that nightclub opened, the band used to go there and play on a regular basis, as well as L'Amour. I don't know if you ever heard of L'Amour's.
Sure.
Rock capital of the world in Brooklyn.
Nice.
So Tyketto, we got to meet the fellas, and one day out of the blue, I get a phone call to see if I would go down to Jersey Shore. And everybody knows the Jersey Shore from the TV show, right? They had a band house. And there's these three guys holed up, minus their singer, Danny Vaughan. And they said, listen, we're writing a new record. Would you come and give us a little input and write a couple songs? So I said, wow, that's great. Tall Stories had just closed shop, so to speak. We had our last hurrah. And so I went out there and I drove back and forth from Staten Island, or maybe I was at Brooklyn at the time. And for about 7 days, we wrote a record. And then after the 7 days, they laid it on me that they were splitting from Danny and what I consider joining the band and singing with them. So again, long story short, I had such a great time with these guys. There was coming out of Tall Stories, the days had gotten dark and bleak. You know, we were, as I said, the chapter was closing, the book was finished, and these guys were joyous, and they had this energy, and we literally had more fun writing these 10 songs than I could ever imagine anybody could ever do. And we did it in 7 days. I mean, 7 days. So I said, well, listen, let's do it. Let's do a band, but we can't, it's not, it doesn't sound anything like Tyketto. At the time, I was gung-ho about the Black Crowes. I mean, I was loving Chris Robinson's delivery because he had this kind of Steve Marriott thing from Humble Pie, which, you know, those are my boys.
Yeah.
And I was into that thing at that time. So we did a record that had a little bit of that Southern thing, you know, Americana kind of rock and roll, which was the antithesis. So just way different than any Tyketto record ever done.
Right.
So just before the record was about to go into production, I guess the artwork and the pressing of the CD, the label said, we have to release it as a Tyketto record. That's just what we're going to do, or there's no record. So our back was against the wall, and we went ahead and did it, but it didn't fly because they had a wonderful fan base.
Right.
And they were used to a certain style of music, and all of a sudden they got thrown a curveball. Now, I think it was a great record. I think it should have had, if it had its own identity, own name, and a new brand, quote unquote, it would have had a fighting chance. But we pissed off the fans. Initially, certainly.
Sure.
Which brings us, this is a stepping stone and a learning lesson, a lesson learned when I joined Journey, was asked to join Journey. And we can get into that.
Indeed. Well, I want to stick on this Tall Stories thing just for a little bit. Or, I'm sorry, Tyketto.
Yeah.
And what I want to touch base on was you guys recorded this record at Pachyderm Studios in Cannon Falls, Minnesota. Yeah. You guys go and record this record at Pachyderm Studios in Cannon Falls. Right. And this place has, you know, recorded In Utero by Nirvana and Grave Dancers Union by Soul Asylum. But I remember, you know, hanging with you while you were with Journey, and we had this conversation about recording at Cannon Falls. And you asked me the question that so many people ask about Pachyderm. Did you see the ghost? Yeah. Did you see Did you see it? Well, do you have any stories about that, man? Well, just morbid curiosity.
This is it's just a great little slice of my timeline. So we jumped into a van. I don't know if it must have been a rental. God knows, it must have been a 1980, 1970 van. All the band's gear goes in the van, and there are 4 dudes sitting up front, squished up, you know, to the windshield. And we drove through the night, maybe took us all 12 hours or so. We get into this Pachyderm studio, which is deep into the woods.
Yeah.
You know, fantastic. It's the most beautiful, serene setting you can ever imagine. And it's what do you call, like all the trees, it's a huge canopy. There's no sunlight to really speak of. It's all right there underneath these wonderful old mature trees.
Right.
With the exception of a brook, there's like a stream that runs along the side.
Yes.
That has its own story. So I don't know if it was the first night, but we brought up, at the time I was drinking. I'm 8 years sober now.
Oh, right on, man. I'm 7. So
look at you.
Going on my 8th, man. So right on. Good on you.
It's the new black.
Hey, man.
So kids, it's the new black. So I don't know if it's the first night or the second night, but we're sitting around drinking B&B, right? Benedictine and brandy or beers, a whole bunch of this and that. And I think we're starting to see shadows, or somebody said, "Did you see that?" And, you know, we're like, "What are you talking about?" No, we didn't see anything. And a couple of days go by, and then I guess we must have spoken to one of the staff. And he says, "Oh, you guys don't know." We were talking about, you know, odd things happen. Maybe it was the booze. I don't know. But they said, "Oh, no, don't you know this place is haunted?" We were like, "What?" And of course, now the hairs are raised on our arms and on our necks, and now we're looking for it, and now we're material. Now it's just manifesting everywhere. Who moved the butter in the refrigerator?
Right.
Hey, my guitar's it's out of tune, and it's not just a little out of tune. It's like whack out of tune. Things like that. But here's another crazy little story. We did a song on the record called Radio Mary. And I was talking about, which is one of my favorites off that record. We go out to the stream that's beside the studio, and it's in the dead of the forest, and it's a glorious day, and I need a break. I don't know if I'm working on lyrics. I just need to clear my head. And I walk, I don't know if I walked about a quarter mile down the stream. And in the middle, or like just off to the side of the stream, there's a statue of Mary, right? Mother of Jesus.
Right.
If you grew up in New York City or in Brooklyn, my Italian neighborhood, every other house we used to call them Mary on a clamshell. No disrespect, no sacrilege, but we called them Mary on a clamshell because behind the statue of Mary just had this, what looked like a clamshell.
Right.
So one of these Marys on a clamshell was in the middle of a stream out of thin air. What's it doing there? I mean, come on. And we're doing a song called Radio Mary. So that was kind of odd as well.
Yes. Man, I just all the stories that I hear of that ghost and my own like little experiences too. I mean, I'm Mr. Skeptic, but there's something real interesting at that place, man. And it's always funny just to have that little group of musicians who have worked there, who have stayed there, and like you said, this place, man. Pachyderm has the band house, which it looks like a Frank Lloyd Wright house. It's just it's
outstanding.
It's crazy. It's such a beautiful place. But yeah, man, I'll never forget several of these moments, and it's stuff like that, man. So it's so cool to have even just that little that little thing that we can share of like Pachyderm.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Just not to give them a huge plug, but it was a beautiful room. The drum room, when you cut the tracks, huge, massive drum room.
Yes.
Beautiful control room. That was a pleasure.
God, if I remember correctly too, and again, talking shop, but if I remember correctly, that board was the Neve that was in Electric Ladyland, and then was John Lennon's, if I remember correctly, and then brought into Pachyderm, and now it's, oh my gosh, I want to say it's in Florida right now. So.
Oh, really? Well, things like that sometimes, if the word gets out, I mean, I wouldn't mind, I wouldn't doubt Electric Lady would say, hey, get that board back or something like that.
Right.
Because that's got some history.
Oh, man, right?
To it, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was probably the last board that was used for both. Man, that might even be a little cryptic, but I'm just thinking about this now. So that would probably have been the last board that Hendrix used, the last board that Lennon used.
Very possible.
And even the last board that possibly Cobain used. So that's crazy now that I think about that. But anyway.
I'm going to take just a brief detour because you mentioned Lennon and this kind of gear. When I was probably in my early 20s, getting back to that Brazilian band, there were three, just prior to, they were called Maestro. And one by one, we replaced one of these wonderful, talented Brazilian musicians with an American New York guy, which finally became Tall Stories. So we're getting spec deals, right? We're being allowed to record for free in the middle of the night, anywhere from 12 to maybe 8, I don't know.
Sure.
10 to 4, whatever, for free, with the understanding that if some miracle happens and we get signed, we're going to use the studio to record a full record, And this is also a great way for the assistant engineers to go to work and practice and record, bands, Think of Bon Jovi pushing a broom and he wants to be an assistant engineer or an engineer. Well, he starts recording bands in the middle of the night.
Right.
That's exactly what we're doing. So one night I'm doing a vocal session, and the owner of the studio is there, and he's producing. This is one of the good sessions I'm doing. And in the middle of the session, now again, this is maybe 2 a.m, and he stops us and he says, "Give me a minute." He runs upstairs. Now this is after John Lennon passed, and John Lennon did a great many hours recording in record studios in New York City. Now it's an Indian restaurant, by the way.
Wow.
And he goes into his safe up in maybe some other floor. He comes in with this old Neumann microphone. I don't remember the exact model, but he said, first before that, he said, "Steve, I want you to sing, and I want you to sing as softly and sweetly as you can," which I wasn't doing. I was probably belting and just, not thinking, what's my motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes and brings his mic. He said, "The last person that used this was John Lennon. And I've had it in the safe. I've had it in the safe all these years since his death. And I want you to use it. And I want you to just listen to me." And he's producing. This is what I want you to do with this very special microphone. I want you to, just be somebody else and sing it as emotionally as you possibly can. And that was one of the very most special moments in recording for myself.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that gave me goosebumps.
To have that
man.
honor, to be granted that honor and bestowed to me by, again, this wonderful man who's not with us anymore. Roy Sakala was his name. He was the owner of the studio. Roy Sakala. Roy, this one's for you, buddy.
Yeah, man.
I'm going to take a short break from my conversation with Steve Augeri to admit something to you that I'm not real proud of. I was really late to the hot sauce game, y'all. Yeah, it's a sad thing, right? I was just late to it. I have one Billy Gibbons to thank for showing me the light. As a matter of fact, I remember being on tour with him, and he brought me onto his bus, and in the front area of his bus is the kitchen area. And along the wall of this kitchen area was hot sauce after hot sauce after hot. It lined the entire area. It was incredible, all these hot sauces that he'd amassed. I remember going grocery shopping with him and checking out hot sauces in the grocery store. So, ever since then, and ever since Mr. Gibbons, showed me the magic that is hot sauce, I have been a changed man. I go out and I seek the best hot sauces I could possibly find, and I have some for you right now. Crime Robbers hot sauce. You want to check them out. Man, there are so many different flavors of this hot sauce, so many levels of heat, from mild to just absolutely rip your head off. They are so good. You need to check them out. So please go check out Crime Robbers. You can find them at crimerobbers.square.site. SITE. crimerobbers.square.site. You let them know that your buddy KV sent you, and get ready for hot sauce excellence. Go visit their website. Go visit their socials. Burn and rejoice, my friends. It's Crime Robbers.
I mean, a lot of us are familiar with, how you got the gig with Journey, right? So you were doing the Gap thing and you got the call. But man, how did you go into it, and how did it affect you on a personal level?
Well, let me answer this around the barn, so to speak.
Sure.
Because you keep on bringing up Mr. Consistency, and I will be the first one to tell you that I'm the least consistent or had been up until I joined Journey. And this is the truth. Because whenever I would do a show with either Tyketto or Told Stories, they were never, well, yes, they were tours, but I used to get pretty beat up. I'd go out there because I never had training. So I'd go out there like a street fighter. Think of the gangs in New York, or think of, what's the one in Coney Island? Come out, the Warriors. Right?
Yeah, the Warriors, yeah.
Usually, you should go out there and give it 200%. And when I walked off stage, there was nothing left. I left it all unstaged, you know, and that's not smart if you have to get up and do it again the next day, right?
Right, right.
So I literally used to have a whole week to recover, and my voice would be back to 100%. So, so when I got the Journey gig, I was this guy that I'm talking about, and I had to learn to go from that brawler, right, to a fine, seasoned, schooled, educated singer. And so I went to the best vocals coaches. Joel Hewing was one of them in West Hollywood, who was actually one of Steve's coaches or teachers, to name a couple of others. And I went from this scrapper to somebody who started to learn the ropes and learn how health was a big issue. And but getting back to when I did get the gig, and in between that, getting the gig and doing my first show, I used to have a little minivan, and we lived in a little apartment in Brooklyn. And I used to get in my little minivan after work. And so maybe from 7 to 10 o'clock, I would drive all over New York City. So I'd go hit all the boroughs. I'd drive up and down Manhattan, up one avenue and up down the other, up another avenue. And I'd literally cover the entire grid singing first my lesson, and then I'd sing the set.
Wow.
So this is how I literally trained, because I was very self-conscious singing in my apartment. I had people above me and outside. And even, you know, at first, you know, you're a little rough when you're starting after not singing for X amount of time. And then, so I literally, my little minivan and the road was a big factor in me learning the Journey set.
How
Getting
cool.
from point A to point B.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of gas. I a lot of gas, man, and a lot of miles.
Right, right, man. Yeah.
It was beautiful. I got to tell you.
I bet, man. I mean, but yeah, okay. So just again, I want to get on that personal level, not even with the guys, but just like, I mean, as a singer, as who you are to front a legendary band like that, how did that sit with you?
Aside from being daunting and being an honor to be and a privilege to be asked to do it, it was like my last chance at a dream that I had since I saw the beat since I was 5. So
Right.
there I was, 48, and someone's giving me a second chance. So what do? Do you waste it? Do you let it? Or do you go and really, really grab that tiger by the tail? And so that's basically what I did. I mean, just think about it, you know, because if you don't give it 1,000,000%, it may never happen. So I did what I never did in my life, and I really applied myself in every aspect, every which way but loose.
Man, well, I loved it. I loved it. And you and I had spoke just before we got on the air. When I had met Steve here, I had met him at Red Rocks in Colorado, and it was after the show, and that was probably, you know, I've gone to several Journey shows, and I think that is probably my favorite one. Definitely top 5 concerts for me was this Red Rock performance, right? But when we're talking backstage, I remember telling him, I was like, because I was such a huge fan of Tall Stories, and you know, I already fanboyed on that one, man, but you know, but I told you, I was like, I knew somehow, some way, deep down, I don't even know what it was, I knew that this guy was going to be the singer for Journey at some point, and there he is. And man, it worked, and you did a hell of a job, man. So good on you for taking the bull by the horns, man, and stepping up to the plate, because that is, again, huge shoes to fill for sure. But brother, you knocked it out of the park and brought some of the best music that band has created, you know, gosh, like ever. Like I love the records that you're on. So
Well, thank you. I mean, just being a small part of their history is quite an accomplishment. I'm proud of that. But you know what I told you, I do like to talk shop. And just while we're on the subject of
sure.
I'm not skirting the Journey issue, but my band and I, the Steve Augeri band, just played Red Rocks for a private party. If you can imagine, somebody rented Red Rocks. Now, if you
Sure.
guys are familiar with Red Rocks, it's an amazing amphitheater built into the red stone rock just outside of Denver.
Yep.
And so the one thing I remembered before, and I was kind of freaking out about it, I was getting a little anxious because some days are challenging to sing sea level, but now you're a mile high, the air's thin, and it takes every ounce of energy to suck that air in and produce a sound. And I remember the shows I did with Journey. They'd always have oxygen for both myself and any drummer. At the time, it was Dean Castronova. And in between breaks, we'd go behind the drum riser and we'd be sucking air, oxygen just to get our shit together, right? So we just did this show, and lo and behold, it was the same. However, for some crazy reason, I had the easiest. Well, maybe because I was used to it and I knew what to expect, but I had one of the best shows I ever sang that nobody heard, except this small crowd of maybe 100 people in this massive, legendary venue.
Yes.
But so it was kind of good to walk away and say, "Oh, that wasn't so bad after all, was it?"
Well,
And
man,
it was good to go back to what an incredible venue. If you guys ever get a chance to get to Denver, whether you see a show or not, they'd probably be able to, drive out there and just take a look and see how magnificent the place is.
yeah. I know that when I've been on the road, I have yet to play Red Rocks, man. But whenever we're on the road and we're actually out that way, we definitely make a little stop there just because there's little trails there. We go hiking and you can actually get into the venue and, kind of just walk up and down the steps, man. And that was fantastic. But yeah, it is legendary. And, just.
Let me just say real quick, that particular night or the night before, it snowed. So so we were playing in the mid-20s Fahrenheit, and there was snow on the seats and the ground. So that was a blast.
Wow.
That was a first.
Wow, man. Wow.
Yeah, we got out after that show. We were like, "Phew, we did it!" And how did you do it?
Right. I'm going down this highway of your career, of your life, and here we are, solo artist again, putting out great music. Tell me about the creation of 7 Ways Till Sunday. You're talking about the pandemic. Are these songs that you had? Are these songs that came about, fairly recently? Talk about that whole thing, man.
Okay, great. So over the past 10 years, as I said, I've recorded and released some songs as singles, and now it was time to do a record.
Yes.
However, what motivated me was when we got shut down in early 2020. Here we are in New York City, and it's ground zero, and the place it's like everybody's freaking. I mean, we're seeing the worst of the worst. The worst possible situation has presented itself, and it's evolving, and it's only getting worse. So everything's shutting down. All the shows are getting canceled, and my son and I, frankly, we had just returned from 3 shows: one in Oklahoma, one in Mexico, and one in Austin, Texas. And as soon as we get home, my son and I are sick. Okay. So we go to the emergency room, and everybody's wearing hazmat suits. And they don't yet have testing, the means to test you. So they test us for every other thing imaginable. And we come back negative, but we're all deathly sick. So they send us home. So let me get beyond this. I won't get deep into that. What it did do to me mentally was said, Steve, you have a litany and a trunk full of songs. You need to make a record. Get it out there before the end of the world happens. You need to do this for yourself. So that's exactly what I did. So I started writing immediately with two fellas in my band, Craig Pullman. He'd come up with an idea. He'd send it off to our guitarist, Adam Holland, and Adam would send me what they worked on, and then I would take it and restructure it a little bit, shape it, put a melody and lyrics to it, and we created 3 songs on the record: "7 Ways Till Sunday," "Bated Breath," and "Beautiful," the third track. And so we created, or I found out we had a pretty decent writing team, and that's the best thing that I think came out of this pandemic, was that we found ourselves as a team and writing. And again, it was another joy writing with these guys, because it just was. And so then I started reaching back in my past, and I found 2 songs that I had written with one with Jonathan Cain and one with Neil Sean. Neil's song was a song called "Desert Moon," and the one with Jonathan Cain is the new single called "Never Far From Home." And then I took those songs that I had just written and the 2 songs from my past, and I just started to want to put together a well-rounded record. I think that I was very conscious of making sure that I didn't repeat myself. I wanted to keep it fresh, each song kind of be a little diversified. So stylistically, sometimes it takes a little turn left and a little right. And I think that's when I'm really, again, it was conscious, because my favorite records were records like that. And it gets back to the Beatles, because when I think of my favorite Beatle records, they were kind of, they always kept you guessing. If you dropped the needle on the turntable and on the LP, and you went from track to track, something different jumps out, some different flavor, some different information. And I kept that in mind at the forefront of my brain, and I wanted to do that. Whether I succeeded or not, that's for the listener to decide. But that was so we put together a group of songs, and that's it. It's called 7 Ways Till Sunday. It's my expression. It's a way to self-express, and that's probably half the beauty of it, is finally to tell your story. I think I'm getting a chance to tell my musical story.
Well, a story, like you said, it's very diverse. There's a lot of versatility found in the record, right? It's rock and roll with gosh, I'm hearing even like little Motown things in there, here and there. It really does cover a lot of area. But the songs are fantastic, man, and the production is fantastic, and it sounds fresh. You really accomplished something very, very special with this brand new record. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think I've taken a bit of a chance, because I think if look, I've listened to music, and I love so many different styles of music, and it could be the kiss of death. It could be suicidal if you step out of the lines of a specific genre. But I've never been about that, or I never wanted to be about that, because I love too many styles of music. So I try to stay within the boundaries and still kind of poke the bear, so to speak, right? So so a lot of it has to do with, I incorporated a cat who mixed it, a really special guitarist by the name of Steve Mandel. He's down in Nashville with a band called Six Wire. Now, Steve is a brilliant guitarist, but he's also produces, and he's played with some, just huge names in country music. But he mixed my record, and he did it, which was kind of the freshness that people are talking about. I think has a lot to do with his ear and so he took what I was throwing at him, and he put it through his filter, and that has a lot to do with it. Man. There's a lot of things I would never dream of doing, and he likes snare, louder than the voice, for Christ's sake. But that's how they do things in Nashville.
Right.
Sounds, we battle about that every once in a while, but and then we'd compromise. And at the end of the day, I think the record sounds, different. I think there is something unique about, and then again, maybe it's not unique at all to a contemporary listener, but to me, it's got a freshness, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It sounds fresh.
And yet I think it's got vintage stuff that would have, you mentioned Motown. And, I grew up, my uncle put me in front of a television set to listen to the Beatles. And my dad played Motown and all these great R&B records when I was a child, including Sinatra with that. So
here we
throw
go.
A ball of wax together, and you got a gumbo that's got all kinds of seasonings and different kind of things. So,
And that turns out to be 7 Ways Till Sunday, man. That's what
correct.
it is. Absolutely.
You are right, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, with that said, 7 Ways Till Sunday. This is the title track. I want to play this. Can you tell us a little bit about the song?
Well, as I said, the talented Craig Pullman, who, by the way, my band was originally a band by the name of Valentine, and Hugo Valente was the singer. And one day these guys fell into my lap, and I'm happy they did. I'm glad they did, because they've been with me for over 10 years now. With the exception of my son now is the drummer. So my son Adam is on the kit behind me. So that's
cool.
that's a thrill, and it's beautiful. So the musical concept was, Craig lays this piano, which you'll hear the introduction, and then he hands it off to the guitar player, and he does his thing, and he does a little edit here and there, and they lay it on me, and listening to their music inspires me to write a melody on top of it, to fit what they've laid in front of me, and it fell into place pretty quickly. And I'll tell you another thing too, which I've never mentioned. I had just gotten over COVID. Maybe this is the second time, because I've had it for three times, and the voice is just recovering. And I think I stepped down the key a half step, because I'm having trouble singing. So, but at the end of the day, getting back to the John Lennon microphone and the producer at Record Plant, I think there's an emotion that I would have never gotten had I was in 100% health, and if it was back in the original key. I think it comes through the speakers. I think it somehow, as a listener, I think you hear some desperation, and so things happen for a reason, and that's what you hear in the performance.
Well, there you go. 7 Ways Till Sunday by Steve Augeri. Check it out.
is a promise never kept. And if every single place are the questions that you raised, then since you could never sleep at night, someone hold me tight. I'm crying out, I'm reaching out to anyone who'd hear me out. It's 7 ways till Sunday. How could this ever come to be? What's it gonna take to win your heart? What's it gonna take to win your love? 7 ways to Sunday and nothing more. I'm crying out, I'm reaching out to anyone who'd hear me out. It's 7 ways till Sunday. How could this ever come to be? Yeah, well, I'm crying out, I'm reaching out to anyone who'd listen now. 7 ways till Sunday. How could this ever come to be? Oh yeah. How could this ever come to be? Ever come to this?
Well, there you go. 7 Ways to Sunday off of his brand new record of the same name. You got a lot going on with this record, man. And it's been, it's been awesome to listen to the whole thing. It's been awesome to hear, the stories behind it, the stories of you coming up to this point, because this really is a culmination of your story, like you were saying. With that said, within these songs, within the collection of these 11 songs here, what is your story? What are you trying to express with this particular collection?
It's just my first solo record, and I didn't want to leave any emotion. I wanted to convey different feels and different moods that I like to listen to when I listen to music. And I'm going to talk to the songwriters out there and ask you if you've ever written a song that brings you to tear. I mean, there's something divine about it, or there's something of another world, of something comes down and touches you, and you are able to create something that brings an emotion out of you. And this happens on occasion. Another strange thing happened to me where I would wake up with a song in my head, and I know this happens to other people too, and then just get right to a pen and paper or a guitar. And how on earth do you create in a dream? And how does it, I mean, where does that come from?
Right. I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
That's insane.
Yes.
So these things have happened during the creation of this record, during the writing process and that sort of thing. And it's just, I'm a private person, but when it comes to music, I want to share it. And it's like that. Doing an interview like this, I'll shy away. Normally, I was like, no publicity, please. No, I'd rather not do that, and I'd rather not do that. But when it comes to talking shop, I like to get under the hood with you, Ken.
Yeah.
So I love doing that.
Thank you.
And when it comes to expressing music, that's what I'll talk about.
I love it.
And I'm glad you gave me that outlet today.
Amen.
I appreciate it, and you and all your listeners.
Well, thank you. Well, here we go, man. We also got to talk about this because I cannot stop talking about this. I want to see you out on the road. You're going out on the road. You got hooked up with quite the tour, my friend. And
Dude.
I've been seeing like promo stuff for it, across the social media platforms. I've been, hearing about it on radio. Tell me about this tour coming up.
So years back, I made an acquaintance of Mr. Brett Michaels, who is an incredible shining star, both in entertainment-wise and so many other aspects of life. The guy, he's just remarkable. I'll leave it at that. But I'm thankful to have met him and come to know him. So Brett tapped me for he's got this brilliant tour coming up this summer called Party Gras, and it's exactly that. He's got Mark McGrath from Sugar Ray. He's got Night Ranger and Jefferson Starship on the bill. And Mark and I are going to be coming up with his band and doing a handful of songs, each of us, with his band, the Brett Michaels band, who are fantastic. And a good friend of mine, the guitarist, Pete Evick.
Oh, yeah.
This guy. He's wonderful. But and so again, if you get a phone call from Brett and say, "Hey, Steve, come join me and my Party Gras. We're going to have a great time. We are really going to have nothing but a good time." And it's going to be, everybody just playing a bunch of hits from beginning to end, and it's just going to be outstanding. And it's literally, the fans are going to get their money's worth. That's the story.
Right. That's so cool, man.
And
Because
happy to be part of it.
well, absolutely. But again, it's like, how many hits? Oh my gosh. Like that's the second I heard about that lineup and I saw the promo for it, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is just going to be like, this is ear candy all day long, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I've come to know Mr. McGrath, Mark, and he's the same kind of cat. These two guys could have been brothers because they're just high energy, positive vibes, just, the room, when these two guys walk into the room, it lights up. It could go on fire because their energy is so high and their, attitude is so, positive. It's contagious. I love it.
Yeah,
So it's going to be a blast.
man, when I was playing guitar for a band called Scarlet Haze back in the day with my dear friend Cat Perkins. And one of the bands that we'd play with quite often was Brett's band.
Oh,
And I can tell you right now that, the guys in his band are fantastic, but he is such a good guy, man. He is
Well-
such a nice cat.
but when he hits the stage, man, it's 1,000%.
Yeah.
He gives it, and
Everything.
nobody walks away and said, Brett, he lays it out there. He doesn't leave anything out, and you walk away smiling, singing. He just has this effect on people. He's just,
He is.
that's
Yeah.
why we're still doing this, here and now at our stage of our career. He's the man.
He is the man. He is the man. And yeah, what a hell of a showman. And like you said, 1,000% every single night. Like he does not phone it in. The times that we played with him. Yeah. I've never seen that guy phone it in.
He's a special cat.
What's next for you?
Well, I'm working this record and I just want to get it to as many sets of ears as possible. I'm not in it. I'm comfortable. I have a roof over my head. I don't think the bank's going to take it at this point. So I'm not in it for the money. I'm definitely in it for the joy. And like I said, I want to share music. I want to create. It's my art form. I love making music and performing it. So that I'm going to continue to do that for a little longer. I don't know exactly how much longer. And this summer, I'm actually going to put together the songs that I've released over the past 10 years. I'm going to put together a collection of these songs called the singles. I'll have another CD to add to this, 7 Ways Till Sunday. And I'm looking forward to sharing that as well, putting that out and, just putting it out.
Fantastic, man. Well, usually at the end of the show, I go with these rapid fire questions, man. So it's like you don't even think. It's just like whatever comes to your mind,
All right.
you just go, right?
Peanut butter.
All right, man.
Peanut butter.
In your career, man, top 3 songs that you feel can kind of define your career.
Oh, Wild on the Run. Higher Place from Journey. Wild on the Run from Told Stories. And We Will Meet Again from the Generations record.
Sure enough. All right. Top 3 singers.
Ooh. Well, there's so many for so many different reasons. I mean, Robert Plant has been a huge influence on me. Before that was Mr. Steve Marriott from Humble Pie, who was my. I'm going to give you my top 6, I guess,
Do it.
and in no sequence. Steve Marriott of Humble Pie, Freddie of Queen, Steve Perry. I'm going to link him with Sam Cooke. I hope you don't mind, Steve. But Steve. So who I've left you? I've left you. Robert Plant, Steve Marriott, Freddie Mercury, Steve Perry. I mean, I can stop there, but I know I'm leaving out quite a few. And then there's music. And maybe I'll stop there because I'm drawing blanks. But
that's a hell of a list, man. Yeah. I have no
I
problem
mean, I
with
could
that.
go with Ian Gillan.
Sure.
I can go with Glenn Hughes.
Yeah,
Those two guys together, I think that's my 6.
There
That's
you
my-
go. God, and those guys are still just killing it, man.
But then there are guys like Seal, and there's dudes like modern current people. Bono, I was a huge Bono fan. Peter Gabriel, but we'll stop there.
I love it, man. All right. If there was a band or an artist, living or dead, that you could ever collaborate with, who would it be?
Wow. These are not quick answers. Alive or dead?
Either or.
Yeah. I don't know. Does this make me a loner if I don't say anybody?
Yes. No.
I gotta go back to my roots because the Beatles lit my fire. They lit the fuse, and if I could just be a fly on the wall and watch them work and observe them,
Yeah.
there was something interesting that you know who John Kalodner is.
No, absolutely.
John Kalodner was the guru, A&R man for many years. Aerosmith and Journey, on and on and on, Whitesnake. And he once said to me, when you go to work with Journey, he said, one thing you do is you keep your eyes and your ears open and absorb like a sponge, learn everything you possibly can. And I think I did to the best of my ability. I tried to be that sponge. So I would do that with the Beatles. I'd love to watch their process. And yeah.
That's it.
Amazing.
That's great. Last one. One song that you wish you wrote. What would it be?
A lot of times people ask me what's my favorite Journey song, and I would have to say what hits home for me is Motherfucker.
Yeah, that's
And
a great
it's not
song.
just because of the writing. I don't think Steve Perry's performance is untouchable. And I know Mr. Dean Castronovo sings that with the song, with the band currently. But that touched a nerve with me. My family I come from a broken home, and my dad drank a little bit too much, like I sort of did at one time. And that song hits home, and I would say that song, and that's
That's a great song, and I definitely feel you on that, brother.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for hanging with me, man. And dude, again, I'm telling everybody, go check out, do the deep dive on this guy. Like his whole catalog. I keep telling you, Mitch Consistency. There's not a bad record this guy has done. It's crazy. It's crazy. But right now, his brand new one, 7 Ways Till Sunday, it's so fresh and it's so good, and there's something for everyone, and you're gonna dig it. So go check it out. This is Mr. Steve Augeri.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody. You all have a good life.
And that, my friends, is all she wrote. I'd like to thank my special guest this week, Steve Augeri, a man who has such a fascinating career and just great music throughout. Go check it out. He has a brand new release called 7 Ways Till Sunday, which is out now. Go check it out. Go see him on the Party Gras Tour. Him, Bret Michaels, Night Ranger, Mark McGrath of Sugar Ray, Jefferson Starship. I mean, it's just hit after hit after hit after hit. It is going to be a lot of fun. Go see him there for sure. Also, check out his website and his socials. Speaking of websites and socials, hey, go visit mine, www.kenvaldez.com. Over there, you can find out where I'm playing. You could also find out more about my music. Plus, it has links to all of my socials, and I love hearing from you guys. So be in touch, please. I'll get back to you for sure. Also, if you enjoy what you're hearing and you want to, lend a little bit of a helping hand, we got a Patreon going, and it is quite cool. www.patreon.com/Ken Valdez Approach. Every little bit of help keeps the wheels on this bus moving. And believe me, it takes a lot to keep these wheels moving. And so, until next time, my friends, be good to each other. Take care of one another. Bye-bye.
Exactly what I do every time I